all-new Pacific Mornings with Will on 531 PI.
It is 9 minutes past 8 o'clock. This is Pacific Mornings on 531 PI. Good to have you along for the ride. All right. Each week we're joined by a Pacific MP to dissect the political action of the week. It's always my favourite time of the week. And joining me is one of the very best, Palmerston North MP Tangi Utikere, and I'm not biased because he's from the Cooks. Very good morning to you, sir. Welcome in. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Will. Always good to be with you.
Likewise. Hey, look, it's been a whirlwind past few days for our coalition leaders. We've got old mate Luxon over in India trying to, made an announcement of an announcement, frankly, that they're engaging in free trade talks. And then we had Winston over in the United States meeting with Marco Rubio. Particularly keen to get your thoughts on that meeting with Marco Rubio. From what I could gather from the press conference yesterday that Winnie held, it just sounded like a whole lot of pleasantries and that New Zealand was just pretty much acquiescing to the United States. Could be wrong. What's your take?
Yeah, I hear that the meeting went a little bit longer, so maybe the cup of tea was a little bit delayed or thereabouts. I'm not too sure. But I mean, these meetings, they are important for New Zealand, regardless of what political stripe one might wear. And I know that, Winston said that the meeting went well. It's important that we have a strong relationship, particularly with the United States. He still is pretty tight-lipped on what was actually discussed, and I think, Kiwis certainly deserve to know what those conversations were about in the fullness of time. But I do hope that he is talking about things like pending tariffs, the impact that they will have on businesses and people here in New Zealand. Sure, we don't have a large steel or aluminium sort of level of trade, but they're still nonetheless important to workers here in New Zealand. So I'm sure that was on the agenda, and we look forward to hearing what was actually discussed.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, with all that in mind, though, and I think it's fair of me to make this assessment. I'm sure you'll tell me otherwise, but I mean, the Trump administration has made some rather odd moves. The US aid, for example, to the Pacific, under the US, the former President Joe Biden, there was record investment or talk of investment in the Pacific. That is now up for debate under the Trump administration. What do you make of the moves that have been made by the Trump administration?
Well, certainly every week we do learn something new. And what's important is that New Zealand looks to protect its own role in the Pacific. If you're talking about aid, our aid to the Pacific is around 60% of our official or overseas development aid that we send offshore. So we have a very strong role in the Pacific, and we always ensure that, whether it's the United States or other players, that we're always thinking and looking about what it is that they're seeking to do or not do, and how that will impact on our Pacific community. So that's a role that the government does have. We'll continue to hold the government account with our pretty strong Pacific caucus in the Labour team. But the Pacific is undoubtedly important to us as a nation, but also our communities. I mean, our families are there, that's home. And so it's important that we continue to keep the pressure on.
Look, indulge my geopolitical nerdiness for just a second. I do this when any politician comes on. In the sense of, with the Trump administration obviously now reassessing its funding for, say, the Pacific, and, there's been questions in recent years as to whether New Zealand's doing enough for our Pacific neighbours. Does that there allow China to start to seep in further?
Well, when there is, I guess, a perception of any void, whether that's a reduction in aid going into an area or presence into an area or support into an area, then naturally questions are raised around what that alternative might look like. Clearly, what we're seeing with some of our Pacific neighbours is some interaction with China. Obviously, New Zealand has always had a very strong independent foreign policy, but we've also been very strong protectors of the Pacific. If we think about our own homeland connection well back to the Cooks, it's no secret that there have been conversations, more than conversations actually.
It's this scary prospect, at least to me, that we Pacific people have been consigned to a life of renting. What do you make of a statement as, loaded as that, and what's the solution?
Yeah, I mean, those stats were quite disappointing, actually. I think it's about 43% of New Zealanders are able to own their own home, whereas the Pacific is just under 17% or thereabouts. So there is a stark contrast there. The conversations that I have with members of our Pacific community is that they'd love to own their own home. A lot of the focus is actually on how they go about doing that. And so, you know, as a government, we introduced some financial capacity, sustainability measures in terms of making sure that we could work with families and households so they knew exactly what they needed to do to get into the door of their own home. And in many circumstances, actually for families living in their current home environment, whether that's renting or otherwise, and then moving to purchase it themselves. It's unfortunate that the current government have basically cut that program because it's basically continuing to cut the aspirations of many families who would love to basically own their own home.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, look, I mean, no, I'm not asking for a Labour Party policy right now. I know we've got quite some time till the election, but I mean, come on, give us a bit of a, what's Labour's plan, or what are you guys cooking up in terms of trying to get home ownership more attainable for our people?
Well, we know that housing is one of our key focuses when it comes to looking forward to the future. It's around jobs, it's about health, and it's about housing. And having a good school down the road as well. So, you know, housing is something that we are absolutely committed to and focused on. And so rest assured that the Pacific Caucus, the Labor team, will be working extremely hard to ensure that we have policy and that we're doing things that enable that barrier to basically not exist. What are we doing at the moment? We're continuing to hold the government to account. We're asking questions. We're pointing out many of the issues about just homelessness, about, you know, the inability to access good, safe, warm, dry housing. We'd made a lot of moves to make sure that people could call their own homes exactly that, their homes, but that they were at a standard that was fit for families. So we'll continue to do that. But as we head towards the election, no doubt, as you've indicated, policy will come out that specifically targets what it is we want to see change in. But housing is one of those key areas.
All right, serious stuff out of the way now. Let's, before we wrap it up, I just want to quickly talk about, and we had Labour leader Chris Hipkins on yesterday. You guys, I know you're going to remain humble about this, but you guys are riding a bit of a high at the moment. There's no denying. The polls are looking flash for the Labour Party. Chippy, who all throughout last year was asked whether, he's the right man for the job or whether he's going to get the boot. I mean, polls now suggest that he is the right man for the job. I asked Chippy this yesterday, but I'll ask you too, what on earth has changed within the Labour Party? Or is it just that this coalition is digging itself further?
Well, I mean, when I talk with people, I say that the Labor team is absolutely committed to ensuring that this is a one-term government. And our unity around that is, if we look at just the impact that that's having on our Pacific community and the wider community, it is absolutely disastrous. But Chippy is the right man for the job. I mean, we are 110% behind him as a united caucus. And every week there is something that comes out of this coalition government that really is chaotic. They are a government that is taking this country backwards. And so, of course, it's very easy to unite around something like that. But I know that the Labor team is fully behind Chippy. We're fully behind each other, as some of us have taken on new portfolio responsibilities as well, because it is about holding the government to account, but also ensuring that we're connecting with the communities. Yes, we took 12 months to listen, but this is also a plan of action that we need to focus on as well.
I'm glad you brought up the new portfolios. The State of the Nation speech that was made a few weeks ago by Chippy, I loved. Not showing political stripes, I'm just saying. With that in mind, let's talk about the new portfolios and the ones that you now possess. And is there, in some ways, I mean, I saw a media article the other day that perhaps in some ways it's a demotion for you?
Look, I've moved on from being the chief whip. Being the chief whip does come with additional salary, but I made that decision to move on because I wanted to focus all my energies on my new portfolios. I've retained transport and racing, and I've picked up local government, which is a huge sector in our community, and small business. 97% of businesses in New Zealand are defined as small businesses that have fewer than 20 employees. So I want to commit all of my focus to that. It hits me in the pay packet, but that's okay. I'm absolutely dedicated and focused on doing the right thing. And, I thank Chippy for giving me the new responsibilities because I'm absolutely and have been looking forward to them.
Give us a sense of how things are going in Palmy at the moment.
Oh, it's always great in Palmy. It could be better with the change of government, of course. But, yesterday, for example, education was a focus for me. Fantastic graduation over the last 2 days for UCOL, one of our tertiary providers, looking at our Pacific community, celebrating success there, visiting a local school, checking out the lunches and school program, which was absolute crap that they've been getting all this week. Those sorts of things. So, yeah, Palmy is always great, Will, but it could be better with the change of government.
Yeah, look, before I let you go, we just had ACT Party leader David Seymour on directly before you. Media speculation is rife. I don't mean to be the person that shakes the tree, but I'm going to ask, do you continue to hear murmurings of Luxon being ousted? And funnily enough, Seymour said, that he could perhaps work with Prime Minister Nicola Willis. Your thoughts?
Oh, look, that sort of chatter does continue to happen from time to time. I think it's no surprise given the government seems very unstable, given the chaotic choices that they're making, that, many on their backbench and others will get a bit jittery looking at the polls as well. But look, we're focused on the Labor team. We're focused on connecting with our community. Those are matters for the government. But clearly, I've always said that this was a three-person circus. It was just a matter of who was figuring out who was the acrobat, who was the clown, and who was the ringmaster. So, we still have those issues that we need to work through as a country. But I tell you what, each day we wake up, there is another terrible thing that's announced. This is something that's not getting better. It continues to head in the wrong direction.
Tangi Utikere, thank you very much for your time. Enjoyed it as always. You have a good rest of your day and a weekend when you get to it, eh?
And to you, Will, good to chat.